Is the Maryland Goatman actually a Dogman? Or Dogman meets Goatman in Maryland? Dear Scary Stories NYC, I studied the Maryland Goatman for years from afar, hiding my interest from my mean boss, who would still fire me if he knew about this hobby. But when I finally raised the budget to go investigate the state in person, I was shocked to witness something that looked more to me like an upright canine than an upright goat. In truth, there have been Goatman sightings before which resembled Dogman in some ways, but I have to admit I went to Maryland to encounter a creature with horns, like a goat, and cloven hooves. I guarantee you I did see something that had the backward bent legs of a devil or a goat, but they ended in dog paws, not goat hooves. If you're not from Maryland, or if you're not a freak like me, you might not be all that familiar with the Goatman. Usually these days, people do know about the Goatman Bridge stories, but it turns out, if you look into it, that is really only one in a long list of allegedly true stories concerning this beast. It seems to have started appearing in the late 1950s and early 1960s, and as far as I've been able to tell so far, there are no native or pioneer reports of this creature. As many legends do, this one comes with an origin story based on a real location. In this case, the legend begins at the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center in Beltsville, Maryland. The legend reads like it was written by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko. A genetic scientist injected a goat with human DNA, and it transformed into the garrulous Goatman. Then I suppose it must have run down these lawns here, past the USDA, and into the forest beyond. From there it probably followed Beaver Dam Creek, and then as you can see the forest expands and expands throughout Maryland and beyond. Once he reached that first patch of woods, he was a free Goatman, and they were not going to be able to catch him. Now, one thing about the Goatman that's different from most cryptids is that he is often reported using an axe. For instance, there is an allegedly true story I have not been able to track down any evidence or proof of, which claims that back in 1960, the Goatman came upon 14 hikers and chopped 13 of them to death. It was the lone survivor who spread the story of what he said happened all too fast to react to. In 1963, a couple was walking in a wooded area in Huntington, and they heard the sound of someone or something walking in the woods, just out of their range of vision. When they came upon what was causing the sounds, they claimed to have seen something like what would have been called a satyr in ancient Greece. It was like a man, and yet it was also like a goat. The legs were bent and cloven, the head goat-like, and yet it stood upright, with a chest and shoulders like a human male. When the creature saw that it had been spotted, it ran away. Maybe because it forgot to bring its axe with it that time. The Goatman went away for a while, but came back with a vengeance in the early 1970s. Sometimes when he would become the topic of discussion in the location, it would be because someone had claimed to have seen him. Other times a strange killing had occurred, and so the locals just insisted that the Goatman had done it, without any real reason to jump to that conclusion. A cute little doggy was found decapitated in 1971. Now I would have thought Satanists or maybe a lunatic, but the people of Maryland felt they knew it was the work of the Goatman. Still, I'm a true believer in the Goatman. I've had dreams about him, and I can't explain it, but I was always just certain that he was real. And by he, I mean a small breeding population of these creatures. Did they escape from a science lab? Maybe, I don't know. Or are they mutated goats? What could have brought them into existence? Is it just a coincidence that the DNA double helix was figured out in 1953, and then Goatman began appearing about 1957? And another thing, In the woods north of Huntington and Bowie, there is the Patuxent Animal Research Refuge. It's literally a place where they experiment on animal breeding. How strange to just gaze at a map and find two research facilities in the same area that both do the exact kind of research that happens to be in the local folk legend. Thanks to the internet, I found this article in Modern Farmer by Andy Wright from 2013. In it, the author reached out to the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center asking about the Goatman and was met by very defensive spokeswoman Kim Kaplan, who sniffed, "We just think it's stupid." My, what a professional response to an honest question about your organization's involvement in the creation of a legendary creature like the Goatman. I mean, it's so silly. It's not even something that's joked about, insisted Kaplan, who then went on to joke about it. Don't you think he would have retired by now, she asked. Is his great-grandson a Goatman? Is he collecting Social Security? Yes, the Goatman held down a day job for 40 years and is now collecting Social Security. Wow, how defensive was that person? I mean, I guess it is silly to think that they might have ever experimented on goats in this facility, right? Kaplan could not even recall when there were last goats at the center, although she surmised it had been, quote, generations ago, unquote. Oh, generations ago. That's when the Goatman is said to have escaped from that place, which she just told us they were experimenting on goats inside of. She just basically confirmed that there may be real truth behind the legend. She did it in an incredibly rude and condescending way, but she did it nonetheless. 3 years later, there's an April 2016 article from WBAL-TV, which is referenced here by the Phantoms and Monsters blog, and I'll put that link in the description. It claims that people had been reporting seeing the Goatman in Montpelier Park, just to the west of the Patuxent Animal Research Facility. One woman reported seeing a Bigfoot with horns. Of course, since these reports came in April, one has to wonder about them. So I decided what I wanted to do once I got to Huntington, Maryland, which I consider ground zero for the Goatman, is I wanted to head a bit north and camp as unobtrusively in the forest there as I could. I have a very small tent that I've practiced putting up and taking down lightning fast. I'm happy to live off of nuts and berries for weeks at a time, so I never need a campfire. I can vanish quickly without leaving a trace, faster than anyone except Bigfoot, and I was finally where I wanted to be in Huntington. I have to keep details about myself secret until I can reach my retirement in 5 years and 7 months, but I can give you all the facts I learned about those woods in that camping trip. And here is the summation of what I discovered. Those woods are f***ed up. At least, they were on the night I was there. Yes, I said night as in singular, even though I had planned on spending a whole week camping out there. One night was more than enough. It was too much for me, in fact. Information overload. I'm going to try to stay calm and tell you what happened in the order it happened, but this is not going to be easy for me. I was ready to set up camp, and I was sort of wandering around looking for the kind of small clearing I was hoping I could camp in. As I said, I had no plans to set a fire, so I really didn't need much space at all. I caught sight of what I thought was a bear in the distance, and I ducked down behind some foliage to peek out at him and get a better look. I just sort of wanted to make certain I wasn't going to be running away from a Goatman before I left. I wanted to make sure it really was a bear. After all, it looked brown, and I'm pretty sure they're only supposed to be black bears when you get as far south as Maryland. Goats, on the other hand, do come in brown in that region, at least sometimes. While I was squatting down in the dirt, squinting through vegetation to see if I was in the presence of one kind of man-eating predator or the other, I began to realize that what I was doing was insane. Let's talk this through. I wanted to run away from this creature if it was a bear, but I wanted to stay and observe it more closely if it were a Goatman, even though Goatman is said to decapitate people. and even cute little doggies. Why would I run from a bear, but run toward a goatman? My body was agreeing with this new logic, and my heart was beating like the heart of a tiny little bird. The one half of me wanted to run, and the other half remembered how long it took us to get up the money and the nerve to even come here in the first place. And so we stayed. And by we, I mean just the one of me feeling torn in two inside. Well, if I wasn't going to run away in fear, then I'd better get down to doing some real research, I felt. Sliding over silently to a bush with a better angle on the scene, I squinted through leaves and realized I was seeing the animal's hind legs. I couldn't see the feet, and I couldn't see above the legs, but they were bent like those of a goat. I forced myself to breathe more slowly and more deeply, because my fight or flight instinct was becoming harder to keep under conscious control. Not only did I want to run away, I wanted to wet myself and cry for my mommy. I really had not thought through what I was getting myself into. I should have had a minimum of 5 other people around me. I should never have gone into this situation alone. I didn't even want to talk to anyone about it in detail before I left. If something happened to me, there was nobody who was going to notice me missing, except for my mean boss, and obviously, I couldn't tell him where I was going. So, my advice for you is to never attempt something like this without an entire team of people on your side. Some there in the wild with you, and others who can help notify authorities if you go out of communication for too long. Since this happened, I've become a fan of David Paulides on YouTube. All the advice he gives about carrying a transponder beacon and so forth, I wholeheartedly agree with. I'm only here telling you this story by sheer luck. I probably didn't deserve to come back that day, but maybe I was allowed to survive so I could warn you not to be as stupid as I was that day. So while I was thinking too much and not focusing enough, the creature shifted positions, and I could see it had a tail. It did look somewhat like a goat tail, so I now knew I was watching something that was standing upright in the woods north of most historical Goatman sightings, and that upright standing bipedal creature had the hind legs of a 4-legged animal. Yes, they looked to me like goat legs, but they also looked like deer legs or dog legs. The tail was not that of a deer, though, so I narrowed it down to a goat or a feline or a canine or... Okay, I didn't really narrow it down all that much. I had to get closer. I had brought my old Canon 35mm camera with me, so I decided now was the time to take it out and hang it around my neck. Leaving my backpack behind that bush, the camera and I crawled on all fours, as quietly as possible, over to a bush that should afford us a much clearer view of the beast I was pursuing. When I reached my intended destination, I sat down low and caught my breath for a while, listening to hear if it sounded like I had been noticed. At some point after I regrouped, I found a spot to peek out through, and I saw that I was now no longer viewing the creature from behind. Now I was viewing it in profile, seeing bits of the creature's left side. I had been wondering why it was just standing there, and now I could see it was standing in front of a bush of some sort. Shifting my position slightly allowed me to view parts of another, roughly equally sized, bipedal beast hiding behind that bush. This one was far more lightly colored and almost a sort of off-white. I couldn't imagine trying to hide when I was colored that brightly. So, was I seeing 2 goatmen? Or was one possibly male and the other a female? Was I witnessing a mating ritual? Whatever was happening, it seemed I was likely to be the first human to ever be present at such an event. I owed it to humanity and to science to risk my life to record this event. I scouted around, plotting a path from bush to rock to wide tree, a path to gain a closer and clearer view of whatever it was that was currently taking place. I misjudged my path midway through, however, and at a very unexpected moment, I suddenly was afforded a perfectly clear, head-to-toe view of the first creature I had been viewing. I was darting from behind one bush to behind another, and then bam! On my left, I could see this really tall, man-shaped but furry creature, and it most definitely did not have horns on its head. There was nothing goat-like about this. This thing looked either like a really buffed-up uber dog, or a super wolf that stood upright like a man, and maybe even possessed intelligence like us as well. It was concerned with whatever was behind that bush, seemingly waiting for his perfect moment to strike. Not wanting to even take the time to line up my shot, I just pointed the camera in that direction and clicked it. I was in the process of clicking it a second time when that upright canine turned completely to his left to now focus on me. I darted into the bush as he screamed, this painfully loud sort of a moan that was not at all like the kind of sound I would have expected from a canine. I now no longer wanted to hide behind that bush because the creature knew where I was. I stood up to look back and get an idea of what he was gonna do, and I noticed all the commotion had frightened the lighter colored creature who had been hiding from the one who was now bellowing at me. That paler creature stood up and squealed this ridiculous sound that reminded me of a pig in a way, but also like a high-pitched human voice almost. It was nearly the size of the upright canine, but this one had horns up on top of his head. The creature ran away from the Dogman and also away from me. I watched him depart, and I saw the immense man-like dog chase after him. The Goatman did not seem to me to possess very great intelligence. He was most definitely not the devil incarnate, or Pan, or a satyr. He didn't pull out an axe and chop the Dogman's head off. He just acted like a frightened farm animal and ran away, squealing. And because he did, I lived to tell you this tale. So I suppose we all owe a thank you to that horrible herbivore, that ruinous ruminant, the dreaded Maryland Goatman. So I beat it out of the woods, thinking happy and excited thoughts about getting my photograph developed. It was when I got back to my car that it dawned on me that I had never taken the lens cap off the camera. I'm certain that at no point did I take it off because I was concerned about losing it and concerned about scratching the lens. I should have been more concerned with capturing a historic moment, but you know, I don't suppose I thought any of this through enough. So, you may already know that Maryland does have its own native Dogman-type cryptid going way back. He's called the Dueo. Here is a witness sketch of him. He's an upright standing canine, and he's so deadly that he's known as the only natural enemy of the snallygaster, which is another native Maryland cryptid. The snallygaster is a flying dragon. If the Dueo terrifies flying dragons, no wonder the Goatman ran away from him with his tail between his legs. To be honest, especially after my experience, I have to say that there seem to be two very different kinds of Goatmen that people talk about. There's the axe-wielding, lunatic, head-chopper monster who eats meat, and there's the Goatman who runs away whenever people catch a glimpse of him. I mean, a meat-eating predator running away from a woman who noticed him? Is the Goatman dangerous to humans, or is he not? Or are there two different kinds of things out there, both called the Goatman? Maybe some Goatman sightings are really Dogman or Dueo sightings. After all, when I only saw parts of his legs, I myself thought that Dogman was a Goatman. Why? because that part of Maryland is famous for Goatman, not for Dwayyo. Look, Dwayyo sightings are centralized 60 miles away. That's over an hour of driving away. I just wasn't expecting Dwayyo or Dogman, and I would assume neither were most of the other witnesses. Maybe just because people expect to see the Goatman, they sometimes label sightings of Dogman or maybe even Sasquatch as Goatman. It's just a thought, inspired by my own confusion on the day when I was forced to briefly ask myself, is the Maryland Goatman actually a Dogman? Melissa Marshall, we're so grateful. Melissa Marshall, so donateful. Please join us in thanking Melissa Marshall for donating to us through our handy dandy new thanks button under each and every one of our videos. Without people like Melissa and all our channel members and PayPal Club members, we would not be here making new episodes in June 2022. We quite literally can't thank you enough, but we do share some cool perks, which we're about to be informed about by none other than international TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman. Thanks, Biggie, and thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.